there came a tropical cyclone, and there was I with a 5-week-old baby and a 4-year-old. And as I held my baby, I saw water pouring from the roof into the sunken living room. That was terrifying. My then husband had lost his job, and that, I think, created some instability in him and maybe disempowering to some extent. It's what I call compounded stress. I am not sure how I lived through that period. I really am not sure. So faith was my life vest, but I still had to do the swimming. And I remember I must have been so desperate that I said to myself, and it became a mantra, if I can't thank God for what I have, I'm going to thank Him for what I escaped. The future deserves a whole and healed you and me. And the beauty is I got to write a new story. I was the main character, not the casualty. Healing doesn't rewrite the past. It reclaims the future.
Hey everyone, it's Sophia from Sacred You. Thank you so much for being here. A quick message before we dive into today's conversation. You may have been watching the podcast videos, but have not had a chance to hit that subscribe button. So if you have ever gained value from our videos, from our conversations, it would mean so much to us if you would hit that subscribe button below right now, or even just give us a like. And what that means is not only does it allow us to grow our subscriber base, but it allows us to bring in more important guests for you to listen to. And you will be one of the first ones to be notified. So please hit that subscribe button and let's get started on today's conversation.
Hello and welcome to Pathways to Wellbeing, presented by Sacred You, a powerful community empowering women all over the planet. My name is Helen Prince and I'm very pleased to introduce you today to Clover Johnston. Welcome, Clover.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
You're very welcome. I'm really looking forward to this conversation because I think it's something that a lot of women are going to resonate with, unfortunately, because your expertise is around single mums, women who have divorced, separated. And I say unfortunately because it's always sad when relationships do break down. However, sometimes it's necessary. And the more that we can uplift and empower and encourage the women in those situations, it has that beautiful ripple effect onto the children as well, doesn't it?
It certainly does.
Yeah. So I love that you're doing this, you're working in this space. And I'm sure that the listeners today are going to get a lot of helpful information, a lot of encouragement, and most of all, they're going to get some hope that there is a way forward.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. So why don't we start with, I got divorced in my early 30s. At that point, we didn't have children. Actually, that was the main reason for getting the divorce. We got to that point where, okay, I would like to have children. And he's gone, no. Up until then, it was always a possibility. So it was hard enough at that point to have to restart my life. Adding children into the mix just complicates things, doesn't it? Because it's not just the mum that you're looking after, it's also having that awareness and knowing what to do for the kids as well. So you yourself let's start with your story and how you got to be into this. And I'm sure there'll be things that come up through this on what you did and how you moved forward. So we will naturally unpack it, but let's start with share your story and how you came to be doing what you're doing today.
Okay, so let me try to do that in the most brief manner that I can. Okay, at the time, my first child was 4, my second was 0, and things started to unravel. How did I know it was unraveling? there came a tropical cyclone, one of the most devastating in the Atlantic basin. At the time, I was living in Jamaica. And there was I with a 5-week-old baby and a 4-year-old. My mom was with me at the time because, of course, I was in postpartum. And of course, the weather report said that this hurricane, tropical cyclone, was coming. And indeed, it arrived. And as I held my baby, I saw water pouring from the roof into the sunken living room. And oh my God, that was terrifying.
I can imagine.
So the good thing, it happened in the daytime. So we were able to see exactly what was going on. Now, my then husband had lost his job early, about just before May of that year. And that, I think, created some instability in him and maybe disempowering to some extent, because a lot of men tend to build their identities around the capacity to earn. Anyway, the tropical cyclone came and it left us without a home. Luckily for me, anyway, I had a good neighbor and she said, come and hang out with us for the night. And I went, but this was just an interim measure. Gave us about 24 hours into 48 hours to gather our wits as to what's next. We had lost telephone services, we had lost water. The power company cut the power for obvious reasons. They didn't want to predispose the country to electrical fires, etc., etc. So I had a relative who was living nearby. And so they offered me to come over because they still had power. It was a townhouse complex. They still had power and they had water, but no telephone. Off I went over to their home. Now, this was the first really stark, huge red flag. When my then husband, took us over there, and I said to him, I just thought automatically he was staying with us. And he looked at me and said, where I'm going, you can come.
Wow.
I was shocked and I was speechless. I don't think those are just the two words.
Yeah.
I was so emotionally beaten down by this time that I just shook my head and just figured that maybe in a few days, in a few weeks, this is really devastating to everybody what has happened. It's shocking. And so maybe life will somewhat look normal in a reasonable time. Fortunately for me, I was on maternity leave. So in about 4 to 5 days, my brother and sister, who ran a business, they came, got us together, got my mom, and we all returned to my mom's home. About 2 weeks after I was there, the 5-week-old infant started having swallowing issues. Took her to the pediatrician only to find out that she had developed throat ulcers, which prevented her from swallowing. The pediatrician believed it was some airborne bacteria that got into her throat. So I'm just spiraling downward at this point. The pediatrician tells me, the local pediatrician in the area tells me, oh, you'll have to wait about a week for this to clear up. And I'm saying, are you kidding? A week to clear up with a baby of 6 weeks now, 6 weeks old? So my brother suggested to me that let's go back to the city and let your pediatrician give you a second opinion. And we did just that. Yeah. Now, I had given my then husband a heads up as to what was happening. And of course, when I got to the pediatricians, no response. Never heard from him, just crickets. Anyway, the upside of it is that the pediatrician did acknowledge that was the problem, and that she suggested that I go to the ENT specialist because he has more expertise for dealing with something. So that's the route I took. He prescribed. She got better within a week, and she was able to resume normal eating habits.
My
Now,
goodness, a 5-week-old baby who can't swallow, who you can't feed, as a mum, that is stressful on its own. That one event.
yeah, it's what I call compounded stress. It was,
Oh,
when I
yeah,
look back, I am not sure how I lived through that period. I really am not sure.
yeah. This is where our survival just kicks in and you just
Kicks.
do what you have to do. Far
Exactly.
out. Keep going.
Okay, so I'm on maternity leave and I have to return to work. So the landlady, there were two elderly ladies, she had indicated to us that she would have repaired the house, and she wanted me now, about 2 months after going into the third, to just come and have a look at the repairs and see how they were going. And so I returned to the city, looked at the house. I had an elderly neighbor with whom I was very close, almost a mother figure. And so I went over to say hello to her. And so while I was having my meet and greet, she said to me, "Oh, I saw your husband over there, but he tells me he's not coming back to live there." Another shocker. Can you imagine? Because I
Hearing
have
it
not been
from
to,
someone else is a double. Oh my God.
yes, it is, it's looking back, it was quite a betrayal,
Yeah.
to say the minimum. So I said to myself, fancy that you have that information way ahead of me. Anyway, that did not deter me because I had a job to return to. I was getting paid. My 4-year-old needed to get to kindergarten because a family member had actually been keeping her during the week, and we were collecting her on weekends because the school had said, despite the hurricane, we're opening school now and she needs to come. So that again was quite stressful. So we had to pick her up every weekend, drive 2 hours, take her back on a Sunday, but we managed. So I returned like 3 months later to the home that was near destroyed, or the roof of it. And I returned to work. My then husband is not working. He has no means of financial support. He's on rock bottom. And he is now emotionally very volatile. Like I had never seen this before. So something that I had purpose that I would do was that I would never create a situation where he couldn't visit the children. So I had an open door policy. And that was for reason number one, safety and security. They were young, and I also had to be careful about their health because I didn't want to predispose them to anything that could compromise their health in any way, because I was now alone and it was just going to create greater hardships for me as the mom and the sole source of emotional, physical, and financial support. Because
Yeah.
whenever he came now, it was basically just to a little hug and kiss here, see if they're alive, and whatever conversation he could hold with them at that time. But then I was getting a lot of verbal abuse in terms of nonsense, real nonsense. Who is better than who thinks their family is better than, issues that I had never heard before.
Yeah.
So I had put this down to the insecurity of that season of his life. But not a psychiatrist, not a psychologist. I had to begin to focus on myself and how I was going to be handling and processing this grief and pain, because something that's very important in this whole journey and any journey of loss is that it is a season of pain and grief. Some would even label it trauma, and it is trauma to some degree. It just is. And we have to label it for what it is, because if we don't label it for what it is, we have to name it, face it, so we can make it. You cannot hope to heal from something that you can't identify.
Yeah.
It's
You
just
need to acknowledge.
what
Yeah,
you're going
you
through.
have to have that acknowledgement. Otherwise, you cannot change what you won't even acknowledge exists. And that in
Absolutely.
itself can be quite hard to do. So what was when you said you were working, and you said you're not a psychologist, not a psychiatrist,
I was actually
what
working in
were
banking at the
you doing?
time. I was
Okay.
actually working in banking at the time.
So how did
So
you go from that experience? Was it just a knowing? Did you have some help from someone that said, okay, this is because what you said there about identifying that, okay, this is his issue, this is his journey, which is separate to you. Yes, the circumstance has entwined you, but what he was going through and how he was handling it is his responsibility. How did you get to that point? Was that just something that you knew, or did you have support in doing that?
okay, here is why I think I didn't go under, and I'm not underscoring I'm not minimizing the fact that I was in pain, I was in grief.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because whenever a family disentangles, you're disentangling an identity, you're disentangling loss of dreams, loss of hope, loss of the plans you had together. No one goes into a marriage expecting that it is going to end, and it is going to end in a way where you never really had closure. You were not given a reason why it happened.
Yeah.
However, what was so important to me, and this is going to be different for everyone, I was brought up in what I call a traditional nuclear family. It was a faith-based household. So I had really strong, committed parents who cared for each other. They showed that care. They cared for their family. I often say to people, we now live in a world where if the kids don't get hugged and kissed 10 times a day and be told, I love you, that was not my experience. But the ethos of my household, of my family's household, told me and indicated to me that I was loved without a shadow of doubt, that I was loved. And my parents were involved in every detail of my life and my upbringing, and I felt their warmth, care, and concern. So having that socialization helped me to move forward in terms of solidifying my commitment to my children. I knew that they were mine, they would be mine, and whatever the circumstances, I had to see them through.
Yeah.
So while I do underscore the importance of my faith, so faith was my life vest, but I still had to do the swimming.
Exactly. I love that. Yeah. And I think this highlights as well, like you said, everyone will go through it differently. However, we all have that choice whether we swim or whether we don't swim.
Yeah.
And I guess this is where you help people as well to show
Yeah.
them that they do know how to swim. They might need that little bit of help. You might need to be the life vest for them in the beginning, but everyone has that within them.
Yes, and everybody has to choose the life vest that they want to wear. My
Yes.
personal healing leaned on my faith, but it also required a belief in myself, a belief in the process of grieving, believing in that there is a purpose to what I am going through, and it took a lot of perseverance. It's not something you go through overnight. And I want to encourage anyone who is going through any form of heartbreak, because mine may have been divorce and breakup, right? All of that and everything that comes with that. But it is going to be a different journey for others. But we have to stay the course, because healing has to be intentional.
Yes.
You have to make the decision that you want to heal. And healing and grief, here's what they have in common. They have a timetable all of their own. You cannot rush it, and it's a roller coaster. 10 steps forward, 5 backwards. Today you are laughing and smiling. Tomorrow you are laughing through the tears. So there has to be that perseverance, and you have to have that commitment to it.
I love that you've said that, Clover, because sometimes we can think, we compare ourselves, or they took this long, or they're back on their feet, or we make these assumptions about what we see based on what people allow us to see. It's very different, our public and our personal face. And I love that you've said that it has its own timeline. There is no one way. There's no right or wrong. It's just that acknowledgement. You've got to feel the feels, but keep moving through. And is this where
Absolutely.
you come in? Where do you come into the journey with people, and how does that look?
Okay. Heartbreak doesn't discriminate, right? But neither does healing. I come in as a co-parenting coach wherever I am needed in that journey. But it's usually after separation. Even though I've actually coached someone who is in a marriage where they're just not able to leave for financial reasons. Therefore, I have given support in how to handle the issues relating to the children, what they hear, what they see, and basically how to respond to it and how to handle it. Specific advice for that.
That's fantastic, because that's becoming, unfortunately, with today's the cost of everything, certainly in Australia here, affordability is very out of reach for a lot of people. So I heard that a few weeks ago, that people who are separating are actually still staying together purely because of finances. And that must make things, it's just another added complication, isn't it?
It is an added complication, and what it takes is that you're going to have to be much more strategic and responsive instead of being reactive. So it's actually, I think it's going to take, so to speak, coaching and training to get through that. But as I said before, healing isn't linear, it's layered, and it's full of relapses. But what you need is movement. You have to start moving.
Yeah.
You cannot be jogging on the spot. That's not going to help you. Healing is messy, but so is transformation. So for me, I remember there are 2 things that stick out for me even now. When I realized that I was going to be on my own with my kids with minimal support of any kind, and I was, as it turned out, almost 4 years without especially financial support. But it was basically intermittent and inconsistent. But I remember when I realized that I was going to be on my own and these were going to be the challenges, that I would have to be there for them and for myself. I celebrated something, if I can use that word. I already had a bachelor's degree, and I said to myself, this little bit of paper is going to have to do some work because I am on this boat alone with these two children. So I celebrated that. And when I saw that he was not forthcoming, I guess I began to look for encouragement wherever I could find it. And there is something that almost a go-to default emotion that we go through after breakup. And sometimes it applies to teenage pregnancies as well, is the shame.
Yeah.
The shame and the blame and the shame scripts. I made a mistake. What did I do wrong? Who is ever going to want me again? How am I
What's
going to manage
everyone going
without
to
him?
think of me?
Oh my God, that's a major one. You are so right.
Yep.
And so
I remember those internal conversations.
yes. So we go into these shame scripts as opposed to self-compassion.
Yeah.
And what is sad about that? You are at the lowest point emotionally in your life. So you're not even thinking straight. So you now have to purpose, catch yourself when you are emotionally self-pecking, because that's what you're doing. Just gnawing at your insecurities a little by little and putting down yourself. So the antidote for that is self-compassion. And I remember I must have been so desperate. And this was maybe going now well over 6 months, maybe approaching close to a year. And when I saw what was happening on his side, I said to myself, and it became a mantra, if I can't thank God for what I have, I'm going to thank him for what I escaped, because this did not look progressive.
Yeah.
So what was I to think? That maybe this journey was cut short for a reason. It's hard for me to emotionally understand that. But when you saw what was manifesting on the other side, it didn't look like this was a future that I would want to be a part of. This is not a boat I would want to be on, certainly not on a cruise, maybe a pit stop. But that shook me to the core. And I kept repeating that to myself over and over. And that began to help me and to give me a window as to, you have to now develop this capacity, not just to cope, but the capacity to unfold a plan for yourself and your children. And that takes self-awareness. And you don't get to that in a few weeks. It can be months, it sometimes can be years, because you're grappling with the demands of the kids, the physical, the emotional. So grappling with your own way forward is indeed challenging. And it requires a level of focus that sometimes we don't even have the emotional wherewithal or the physical strength. So it's something that we have to keep cultivating. And we answer the questions to ourselves. Why am I feeling this way? Why does it hurt? Yes, because it does. And we have to acknowledge that it is.
And it's okay that it does.
It's okay that it does. But we cannot be overcome by grief and shame. And the more we identify what's happening to us, is the less power it has over us. The less and less it's holding us captive to building a future
And I think this is where you were talking about having faith, and faith is not necessarily tied just to religion. It's just having that
No.
faith that it's going to be okay.
Okay.
Don't know how or why or what or who, but
Mhm.
it's going to be okay. And
And
I remember when I was going through
Mhm.
my separation and I was having all of these, I
Mhm.
can't do this. I'm only 30 and what's people going to think? They're all going to think I'm whatever. We tell these ridiculous stories to ourselves. But then the thing that got me
Mhm.
through that, because there is that point where it's maybe I'll just stay, because that seemed like the safer or the easier option in that moment because of all of this self-doubt. But
Mhm.
then I got to a point, and I don't remember how, but there was that realization, but I'm only 30. And God willing, I've got another 50 years to live. And it was like I saw my future if I stayed, and how I would turn into a bitter, resentful, hateful person.
Mhm.
And that scared me. I was at that sort of that sliding door, so like I can if I go left or right, and that scared the bejesus out of me. It was like I can't. So all of the fear I had about making the change and doing what I knew I had to do but didn't want to because I was scared, that was a bigger fear, and that sort of shook me. And it's okay, I have to. And then
Yes.
that's things started to change. I got to that point, and
Mhm.
to that point when I got to that point. But I think that's what you're talking about.
Yes.
When you get to that point and you make that decision, you don't have to know how. You need to know that you want things to be different. And then that's when doors open up. That's when people will come across your site and they will hear your story and go, oh my goodness, Clover knows how to help me. I'm going to reach out, have a conversation.
Yeah. I would like to talk for a minute about the power of resilience. How do we move from pain to power and purpose?
Perfect.
Resilience is a cultivated gift. It is something we develop. It's a muscle. And the more you work that muscle, the stronger it gets, just as it is in physical exercise. It is not just your ability to bounce back, but building better. But we have to have a framework. And for each and every one of us, we have to create a vision of where we want to go. And you are not going to have it, as you said, all worked out. There is no way. And I didn't. I had a framework. And even before I got married, I had what I call an outline of a life plan. And my outline of a life plan rested on going back to graduate school. That was always in my plan for moving forward, even before marriage. And I remember when I said that to him, like maybe about a year after we got married, and he said to me, so how do you plan to do that? And I didn't even respond because I know that it was going to happen. It didn't matter. It was a plan. And if you tell me that something is not going to happen, my resolve triples, quadruples. So I knew it was going to happen. So heartbreak can indeed crack us open, and it does. But it's not, it doesn't always have to break us. It cracks us open so we can allow light to come in, so we can build that clarity, the confidence, the courage, because we need the clarity and the courage to get to the confidence. And so I kept my focus, and my children, of course, they grew. They started school, both of them school, then they moved to high school. And I eventually left banking and went to work with the government in public relations and communications. Quite a switch. And there's something that I say to people all the time. When you're looking at your upleveling and building your sense of empowerment. Take life, because for most of us, we can't do it in gulps. We have to take it in bite-sized pieces. So I took every opportunity for like short-term courses, any course that was going to give me a new skill and build my skill sets, as long as it related to the job that I was doing. And I found that encouraging and uplifting because I saw myself as moving forward. I saw that reflected in my own performance. And so once you build that muscle and you see a bit of success, they say nothing succeeds like success. Yes, so you're pushed now and you feel that impetus. Yes, I can go on to my next level, or I can go on to goal number 2, and you tick it off and you feel it's something that you should celebrate because it actually
yes.
gives you an emotional uplift. So that's what I did. And in working with the government, I was able, after 5 years working with them, to get study leave. And here came my big, huge break from Jamaica to Scotland. And I remember when I was going, I was so intentional that this was my big break. This was the opportunity that opened, and I am going for it. And I remember resources were thin, so I borrowed half my school fee and half my accommodation from my credit union. And off I went. By this time, I had a third child who was 5, a 13-year-old. My eldest at the time, this time, was now 17, but she was in her final year of high school, so she wanted to finish, so I allowed her. And I had come to adopt a new mantra. It's better to be prepared for an opportunity and not have one than have an opportunity and not be prepared. And I hung on to that. I hung on to that mantra for dear life. And what was really uplifting for me when I arrived was the warmth. So I lived in a warden's flat, and there were a group of porters, and they were so warm and so helpful. And I remember one of them called me aside and he said to me, "How old is your youngest?" And I told him, and he said to me, "Oh, the council has a minivan that comes on campus and picks up children from ages 5 to 10. So they will take her to school and bring her back." And I'm saying, hooray, imagine I had to pay for this back home. So I didn't have to worry about walking her to school. And I was just beside myself. And for my 13-year-old, he said, they will give you a bus pass. You just have to call and make the connections and give them the information about school. And so I was just overjoyed. It's as if a door opened that was not just going to pull me along educationally, but it was also relieving me of some of the stressors that I had. So the breakup of my marriage was now in the rear view, and the difficulties of not being able to collect child support on a regular basis. In fact, I used my marker of going to Scotland as the last time I received a child support check. And the check bounced. So as I was making my way forward, life was acknowledging to me that I was on the right track, and that this resilience that I was building was just priceless, because I was doing it afraid. I was doing it in the face of fear, just building the courage to move through from day to day. So
and I love that you kept, sorry to interrupt you there, Clover.
Sure.
I just want to say that I love that you kept focused forward, not looking at what you didn't have. It's looking at, what do you want? How do I get there? And when you do that, life just falls
Yes,
into place for you.
yes, my friends often say you are brave. I said no, I was desperate. I said no, I'm desperate. So yes, so pain can write the first chapters of our life, but we have to pick up the pen and complete the novel. We
Yeah,
can't let fear become a source of disempowerment. Because as you said, if you didn't step forward and you look at life 20 years, 30 years, and at the end of it, you're going to say, oh, I was crazy not to have made that forward move. So I believe that decision to study in Scotland was one of the most impactful decisions of my life and life for my children. In fact, my middle child, who was the second child when the marriage broke up, I remember she had a lot of emotional issues and she tended to cry for everything. And I was very worried about her. And within a month after going to Scotland, I noticed that there was a night and day change in her emotionally. She was vibrant. She was excited to go to school. And I'm saying, oh my God. And I said to her one day, because it was just too obvious not to ask, I
yeah.
said to her, what has made the difference in the way you are showing up? And she said to me at 13 years old, I am rid of the emotional burden of my father. I never knew any 13-year-old had the capacity to put such words together. I was gobsmacked, as the Scottish would say. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And
So,
that's just further evidence of how resilient we can be.
yes,
And for her
and
to have that realization, though, at such a young age is just, I think it's beautiful. And you had a lot to do with that, though, through your example as well and your decisions.
yes, and I'm glad I did because she got a sense of empowerment
Yeah,
and also an ability to manage her little life at that stage and to be able to also move forward because back home then you had to be taken everywhere and picked up everywhere, but now she was going on the bus. There was nothing to worry about in terms of crime or violence or anything like that. So she just felt that she also had agency over her life. And
yeah,
that was extremely empowering for her and for me because I
yeah,
didn't have to be micromanaging like I had to be doing back home. And to be honest, by now I didn't have the time because I had assignments and I deadlines and all that. So no one can rescue you from the work that you refuse to do. Healing takes work.
yeah.
But we have to see healing as being connected to our personal and professional growth and ultimately our thriving. That is
The
an
work is
absolute,
so worth it in the end. It's absolutely worth it.
it is so worth it. And if many of us look back, we can probably say that some of these men that we left behind were just not worth it. And so you look back in the rear view with almost a sense of maybe victories, maybe too much of a strong word, but in a sense of I made the right decision for the good of myself and my children. Because had I not made that decision, I would still be sitting here and wondering
Yeah. There can
what,
be There could be
What
like that
if?
looking back
Yes.
and even appreciating, even thank you for having this. And obviously there needs to be a little bit of time before you can look back like that. But in
Oh,
that
absolutely.
retrospect, I think
Yes.
you can look back and go, in the moment, didn't understand it, didn't want it to happen, but now I'm so glad it did. And even in my situation, I love my life now. I've got this incredible man in my life, and we've got 3 beautiful children and a home. That would not have happened if it
Good.
wasn't for that moment in time that felt full.
Yes.
And now I can look back on it and go, I'm glad it happened.
Yes, and we have to do it afraid. We have to do it afraid.
Yes.
And as we are probably coming to a close, I'll also make another point about my own journey. So imagine after having that experience in a marriage. So I later went into a long-term relationship, which produced my third child. And this is where it went south. So when I was about to return from Scotland, I remember getting a call from him. And looking back, I cannot imagine somebody being so calculating in what turned out to be a betrayal. And, oh, I can't marry somebody who is living abroad, and you need to come home, and everything is prepared for you. And one of the things I had known about him in those years was that he wasn't generous. So I specifically asked him, what are your expectations of my financial contribution? Oh, all the bills are being paid. You don't have to worry about anything. As it turned out, I returned. And shortly after I returned, I realized that he was in a downward financial spiral. And who got caught in that? When I was told, all you're moving in with is your suitcase. That was a lie from the pit of hell. And the challenge here at this time was I had already been healed. So I was not going to hit rock bottom. I had the wherewithal in terms of qualification and experience to stay afloat. But it's the pain of the betrayal that someone could lie to you deliberately.
Yeah.
So, in a nutshell, what happened is that I was bonded to the government because I had been granted study leave with pay. And now my daughter was entering high school, and I was not about to leave she was about to turn 12, with a dad who had betrayed her mom. And also, I found that he was having another relationship.
Oh, goodness.
So it was really a difficult time. But again, I had to put family above myself. I had to put my child above anything that I was feeling or experiencing. And for me, it has a positive ending. As she came to the end of high school, again, it was my faith that was my go-to. And I prayed and prayed, and I asked God for one bird that could kill two stones. Stone number one was to exit the relationship. And stone number two was to be able to financially support my daughter at university in Canada. And that answer started to unfold around 2013. I had to come to Vancouver, where I am now, to assist my oldest with some family issues that were happening at the time. And so when I came, I really fell in love. I totally fell in love with this beautiful city. And I began to think, how could I fit in here? And I decided that it's such a multicultural city that ESL teaching opportunities would probably be one huge possibility because there are people from all over the world. And so I enrolled in a short course at the Canadian College of Linguistics because I had never taught ESL. By then, I had been teaching college level on a part-time basis while I had my full-time job. And so when I went, the tutor, he said to me as we chatted, he said, you really don't need to do this course because you already have so much experience as well as qualification. But I said, no. I said, any area that I have not been already acquainted with, it's always an excellent idea to just get that particular context and the tools that go with it. It just makes your journey much smoother for yourself and for those who you serve. So I did that course. And towards the end of it, he said to me, if you go to Craigslist, there is an education section. I said, oh, wow, I didn't even know Craigslist had an education section. Yes, he said, yes, it's not just buying and selling. And I went there and I saw a job. It was a teaching job. And at the time, I thought it may have been a local private school or college or something. When I went, there was this tall Englishman, bulky guy. And we introduced ourselves and I laughed and I said, I thought you would have been Canadian. And he says, I'm a naturalized Canadian, but yes, I am British too. So we had an interview and he told me what the job was about. They were actually it was a private school, but in addition to being a K-1 to 12 institution, they were actually writing curricula, ESL curricula, and selling the program to schools in China. And he said to me, the job is yours, but it's in China.
Oh,
I said, oh my God. So I remembered my prayers about wanting one bird to kill two stones. And that was indeed the answer to the prayer. That opportunity allowed me to be able to, of course, live in China for 5 years and to have the income level that could support her through her 3 years of college.
amazing.
So the future deserves a whole and healed you and me. That is the bottom line. And yes, we are going to have pit stops like I did in the second relationship. That was a huge pit stop.
Yeah.
But I was committed to the future and welfare of my daughter. And so even though I was struggling through infidelity and betrayal, I had already gone through my healing journey. So it was just hard for anything to just turn me upside down at this point.
Yeah.
Because of the journey that I had already been on.
Yeah. Yeah. So the second big life-altering moment was more of a bump in the road, not falling off the road into the gutter.
Absolutely. That's an excellent way of putting it.
You have
So
had an amazing life, Clover. It's just incredible. I've loved learning about this. What were you about to say?
I call it a rich life. I said I've had rich life experiences. Staying stuck in your pain is a silent agreement with your past. There is no point in staying there.
Yeah.
We weren't made for surviving. We were made for thriving. But thriving doesn't come without doing the work. And your community, we can look on and we look at other people who have been through that journey and are who we consider our community. We can have those connections, but you can't have the experience without traveling the journey.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work like that.
Yeah. That's
So,
right. You've got to do it yourself. We can look to others. We can be inspired by other people like you. We can be coached and guided by people who have been through something similar like you, but we still have to do the work. So it's wonderful knowing that, I think, as well. You don't have to struggle through alone. Get
no.
help. There is help. And you use the help as long as you need to get. It's like the help is just your crutches until the broken leg is healed enough that you can walk yourself.
Yes. And the beauty is I got to write a new story. And this
Yes.
time I was the main character, not the casualty.
Yeah. Yeah. You wrote it how you wanted the story to
Exactly.
go.
So
Lovely. Oh, I
healing,
love it.
healing doesn't rewrite the past. It reclaims the future as
Oh,
long
I
as
love
we
that.
put the work into it.
Yep. Absolutely. Thank you so much. I've loved hearing your story. Thank you for sharing. And more importantly, I think, thank you for providing that little bit of, even if it's just this tiniest spark of hope, it might be a nice big amber for someone, but even if it's just that little bit to show people, okay, well, where I am right now does not mean where I have to stay. And if anyone watching this wants to just have a conversation because you don't know where that will then lead to. So I would invite anyone to reach out to Clover. All of her details will be below this video. And Clover, is there anything you'd like to leave the audience with before we wrap it up?
I would like to say that life does have many pitfalls and roller coaster rides. But look ahead. There is a reason why your rear view mirror is so small. You need to shrink the negatives of the past and look to that big screen as the vision for your future.
Oh, I love that. I love that. That's perfect because our windscreen is huge, isn't it? And the rear vision mirror, it's that tiny little thing. We can glance at it, but it doesn't need to be the focus. Beautiful. I love it. Thank you so much, Clover. I really enjoyed meeting you. Loved this conversation. And yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you too. It has been a great pleasure. And I hope this blesses and encourages someone.
I'm pretty sure it will. It's been amazing. Thank you.
Thanks again.
Clover Johnston's final thoughts truly encapsulates the essence of today's conversation. There is a reason why your rear view mirror is so small. You need to shrink the negativities of the past and look to the big screen as the vision for your future. If today's discussion sparks something in you, take it as a sign to explore Clover's work further. Be sure to connect with her for her transformational co-parenting and post-breakup support. Find out all her details in the links below, and do not hesitate to reach out to Clover for that first conversation. It could change everything. At Sacred You, we are committed to creating a space where women from all over the world can support, uplift, and empower each other. Visit our website to explore upcoming workshops, events, and community offerings. Check us out at www.sacredu, that's the letter U, .love. And as always, if this episode spoke to you, please subscribe to our podcast, share it with a friend, or leave us a review. The journey to wholeness isn't about overnight change. It's about small, intentional steps that align with your values, your healing, and your future vision. You already have everything you need within you. Your transformation starts now. Until next time, stay grounded, stay inspired, stay connected, and keep walking your pathway to well-being. From our hearts to yours. Thank you.